Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Birthday Party. My ex-wife Diane's birthday party was upstairs in her apartment. As we walked into the lobby of the luxury high-rise on Park Avenue, my son Tommy froze in front of the elevator. "Dad, don't get in," he whispered. "We have to take the stairs." I stared at my 14-year-old. His face had gone pale, hands trembling. We hadn't lived together since Diane and I divorced 3 years ago, but I knew when something was wrong. "Why?" I asked, my voice low. "Please, Dad. Trust me." His eyes darted to the elevator doors, then back to me. I nodded. We turned away from the elevator, heading for the stairwell. That's when it started, a deep rumble from above, followed by a metallic screech that made the entire building shudder. The elevator cable must have snapped. Through the glass doors of the lobby, I could see panicked faces streaming out of the building. But Tommy had known. Somehow he'd known. "How did you know?" I grabbed his arm. "Weren't you telling me?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom's been planning something with Mr. Caldwell. Greg Caldwell, her new boyfriend, the man she'd left me for, the man who'd been quietly buying up properties in my neighborhood, trying to force me out of business. Everything clicked into place. The invitation to this party had come last minute. Diane never wanted me around anymore. Not since the divorce, not since she'd taken half my construction company in the settlement. But suddenly she'd insisted I come, bringing Tommy. She wanted us in that elevator, I said, more to myself than to Tommy. My son nodded, tears forming in his eyes. I heard them talking. Something about an accident that would solve all their problems. The screams from upstairs grew louder. The building's fire alarm began to blare. But I wasn't running. I was thinking. For 3 years, I played by the rules. I let her take everything, the house, the money, half my business. I'd been the good guy, the understanding ex-husband, because that's what society expected. That's what our lawyers advised. No more. "Call 911. I told Tommy, pulling out my phone. "Tell them about the elevator. Make them investigate." While he made the call, I texted my foreman, "Rico, need you at Diane's building. Bring the crew. Something big is happening." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and Diane stumbled out with Greg Caldwell, both covered in dust, but very much alive. Their eyes met mine. Surprise, then something like fear flickering across their faces. "Michael!" Diane exclaimed, rushing forward. "Thank God you're safe." The elevator. I held out my hand, stopping her. We took the stairs. The color drained from her face. "Because Tommy warned me," I continued. "Funny how he knew, isn't it?" Greg stepped forward, all fake concern. "Look, Michael, this is a tragedy, but not the time for—" 3 years, I interrupted. 3 years I've been the good guy. Patient. Understanding. Following the rules. I looked at Diane. "Well, rules are for people who play fair. And you two just changed the game." Sirens wailed outside. Tommy had finished his call and was watching us with wide eyes. "I don't know what you think we did," Diane started, but I was already walking away. "Tell it to the investigators," I called back. "They're going to be very interested in that elevator." Outside, Rico and my crew were pulling up in our trucks. I climbed in my F-150, Tommy beside me. "Dad," Tommy's voice was small. "What are we going to do?" I started the engine, watching through the rearview mirror as police officers began questioning Diane and Greg. "We're going to show them what happens when you cross Michael Burke," I said. "And by the time I'm done, they'll wish they'd died in that elevator." Chapter 2. The Blueprint. The Burke Construction headquarters was a modest 2-story building in Brooklyn, but to me, it might as well have been the Pentagon. This was my war room, built with my own hands, brick by brick. Even Diane's divorce couldn't take this from me. I made sure of that. I sent Tommy home with Rico's wife, promising I'd explain everything later. He was a good kid, caught in the middle of something that would destroy whatever remained of his childhood. But he'd made his choice when he tried to save me. My office had changed since the divorce. The family photos were gone, replaced by blueprints and schematics of my current projects. I pulled out the files on Greg Caldwell's real estate empire. The man was a vulture. While I've been focused on honest construction work, he'd been buying foreclosed properties, flipping them, and squeezing out long-time residents. He'd started targeting my neighborhood 6 months ago, trying to force me to sell so he could redevelop the area. But vultures are predictable, and Greg had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. My phone rang. "Rico, boss, you won't believe what I found in the security footage." "Tell me." Greg Caldwell was in the maintenance room yesterday afternoon. Spent 20 minutes there with some maintenance guy who wasn't from the building's usual crew. I leaned back in my chair. "Can you give me that footage?" "Already sent it to your email." "And boss, I did some digging. That maintenance guy's name is Pete Murphy. Works for a company that Greg owns. Perfect. Enough to raise serious questions, but not enough to prove anything conclusively. That's how people like Greg operated, always just slightly removed from the actual crime. But I wasn't looking for legal proof. I was building something bigger. Over the next hour, I made 3 calls. First to my lawyer, Frank Reynolds, the one man I'd managed to keep from the divorce. "Frank, I need everything you can find on Caldwell's business dealings. Every property, every LLC, every questionable transaction. Michael, as your lawyer, I have to advise. I'm not asking for legal advice. I'm asking for information." Second call was to Angela Romano, a private investigator I'd used to catch Diane cheating in the first place. "I need surveillance on Greg Caldwell and Diane. Everything, their phones, their movements, who they meet with." The third call was to someone I'd sworn I'd never contact again, my brother-in-law, Danny Sullivan. Danny was NYPD, and he hated Greg Caldwell as much as I did. Not because of me, but because Greg had been suspected in a property scam that killed Danny's partner. "Danny, it's Michael." Silence on the other end. "I know we haven't talked since. What do you want?" "Greg Caldwell just tried to kill me and my son." That got his attention. I explained everything. The elevator, Tommy's warning, the maintenance footage. "You're sure it was him?" "I'm sure, but proving it's different. I need your help." Another pause. "What kind of help?" "The kind that stays off the record." Danny exhaled slowly. "You know I'm retired now. Disability." "I know. That's why I'm calling." We talked for 20 minutes. Danny agreed to help, but with conditions. Nothing illegal. Nothing that'll come back on any of us. I lied and agreed. By the time I left the office that night, the plan was forming. Not just revenge, something bigger. Something that would destroy everything Greg and Diane had built, taking them down to nothing. The security footage from the building showed something else too. Something Rico hadn't noticed. In the corner of the frame, Tommy was standing with the building's concierge, pointing at the elevator. The timestamp was 30 minutes before I arrived. My son hadn't just been a victim. He'd been part of it. And that betrayal cut deeper than anything Diane had done. I drove home slowly, thinking about loyalty, about family, about the thin line between justice and vengeance. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the decision was made. Nobody betrays Michael Burke twice. Chapter 3, The Foundation. Tommy was waiting in my kitchen when I got home, drinking a glass of milk like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just tried to set me up for murder. "You want to tell me what really happened today?" I asked, setting my keys on the counter. He froze mid-drink. "What do you mean?" "The building security footage shows you talking to the concierge 30 minutes before I arrived. You were pointing at the elevator." The glass trembled in his hand. "Dad, You lied to me, Tommy. You weren't saving me. You were fixing a mistake." The tears came fast, heavier than before. "Mom said you'd never find out. She said it would be quick and clean, and we could finally be free of you." Something cold settled in my chest. "Free of me?" She said you were holding us back. That if you were gone, we could live the life we deserve with Greg. He's rich, Dad. Really rich. And he loves us. I sat down across from him. "So you agreed to help kill your father. It was supposed to be an accident. Nobody would ever know. But something went wrong." Tommy nodded, wiping his nose. "The timing. You were supposed to come alone, but when I saw you weren't bringing anyone else, I panicked. I've been having nightmares about it all week. When we got there, I couldn't let you die. I studied my son, the boy I'd raised, taught to throw a baseball, helped with homework. The boy who just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. So you saved me," I said slowly, "to save yourself from guilt." I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild a demolition, Tommy. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. I stood up. You're going to help me. What? You made your choice. Now you live with it. You're going to help me destroy them. Fear flickered in his eyes. They'll kill me if they find out. No, I said. They won't. Because by the time I'm done, they'll have much bigger problems. Over the next week, Tommy became my inside man. He fed me their plans, their conversations, their secrets. Diane and Greg thought he was traumatized by the near-death experience, clingy and in need of reassurance. They never suspected he was gathering intelligence. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. Greg wasn't just a real estate developer. He was the head of a criminal organization disguised as a construction empire. The elevator wasn't his first accident. 2 of his competitors had died in the past year. One in a crane collapse, another in a hit-and-run. But Greg had made a crucial error. He'd underestimated Tommy's attachment to me, despite everything. And in his arrogance, he'd shown Tommy documents he shouldn't have, blueprints for his operation, names of his associates, details of his money laundering through shell companies. I started with the properties. Using my construction expertise, I identified structural weaknesses in every building Greg owned. Not enough to collapse them, but enough to trigger building code violations and inspections. Next, I had Angela infiltrate his social circle. She was good at that. Beautiful, charming, ruthless. Within days, she was close to Greg's inner circle, gathering dirt on every illegal deal, every bribed official, every mistress. Danny worked his police contacts, opening cold case files on the suspicious deaths. He couldn't officially investigate, but he could make sure the right people started asking questions. But my real masterpiece was something else entirely. Something personal. The Mayfield Project. Greg's crown jewel. A luxury development on the waterfront, his biggest deal yet. He'd spent 2 years and millions getting the permits, clearing the land, securing investors. The project was supposed to make him legitimate, transform him from criminal to respected businessman. I've been studying the blueprints Tommy stole. The foundation was brilliant, a complex system of pilings and supports that would make the buildings earthquake-proof, hurricane-proof. But there was one flaw, one tiny weakness that only an expert would notice. The main support beam's angle was off by exactly 3 degrees. Not enough to fail inspection, but enough that under the right stress. I call my oldest enemy in the construction business, Vincent Moretti, the man who tried to destroy Burke Construction in the early days. We'd fought so bitterly that we'd ended up respecting each other. Vinny, you still hate Greg Caldwell. With every fiber of my being. How would you like to ruin him? 2 days later, Moretti's company accidentally hit a water main 2 blocks from the Mayfield site. The street flooded, seeping toward the construction site. Nothing unusual, these things happen. But when the water hit Greg's foundation, with its 3-degree flaw, everything changed. The piling shifted, just slightly, just enough to require a full inspection and recalculation of the entire support structure. While inspectors swarmed the site, I sent Tommy to plant evidence. Documents showing Greg had bribed the original inspector to approve the faulty design. Documents with Diane's signature on them. By the 3rd week, their world was unraveling. Building code violations shut down 3 of Greg's properties. The police reopened investigations into his competitors' deaths. His investors were demanding answers. But I still wasn't done. Because the real target wasn't Greg's money, or his buildings, or even his freedom. It was his relationship with Diane. And for that, I needed to go deeper. To find the one secret that would destroy everything they had. Chapter 4. The Excavation. The Parkview Diner at 3 a.m. was the kind of place where secrets went to die. I sat in a corner booth with Angela, watching her spread photographs across the sticky table. You were right, she said, sliding a photo toward me. The affair started before the divorce. For years, not 2. I picked up the picture, Greg and Diane kissing outside what looked like a hotel room. Where? The Windsor, their usual spot. I bribed the hotel staff. They've been regulars for years. Angela pulled out another stack of photos. But that's not the interesting part. The next photo showed Greg with a woman who wasn't Diane. Blonde, younger, unfamiliar. Meet Rebecca Connors, Angela continued. Greg's been seeing her for 6 months. She works at his office, accounts department. I studied the image. Does Diane know? No, but Rebecca knows about Diane. She's been collecting evidence. Evidence of what? Angela smiled. It wasn't pleasant. Embezzlement. Rebecca thinks Diane's been skimming from Greg's accounts. Small amounts, regular transfers, but over 4 years it adds up to about $2 million. The irony hit me. Diane had left me for a richer man, claiming I'd never amount to anything. Now she was stealing from him. Give me Rebecca's address, I said. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside Rebecca Connor's apartment. She answered on the first knock, dressed in yoga pants and a tank top, holding a glass of wine. Are you Michael Burke? She asked. I nodded. I've been expecting you. She stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was neat, organized, like her accounting work, I suspected. She gestured to the couch. Pour me a glass of wine without asking. How much do you know? I asked. About the elevator? About your ex-wife? About Greg's real business. She sat across from me. Everything, and yet you're still with him. She laughed. I'm not with him. I'm documenting him. For the past year, I've been building a case. A real case. For who? The FBI. That changed things. You're an agent? Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating Greg's operation for 2 years. The murders, the bribes, the money laundering. We know about all of it. But evidence that'll stick in court? That's harder. Why are you telling me this? Because you're planning something. Something that could either help or destroy our case. She leaned forward. And because I know what they try to do to you. We talked for 2 hours. Rebecca outlined their entire case. Close, but not quite there. They had suspicions, patterns, but no smoking gun. Diane skimming could be it, she said. If I can prove Greg knew and use it to control her, it opens up everything. How can I help? Get me inside Tommy's head. He knows things he probably doesn't even realize he knows. I thought about my son, already a double agent, already carrying too many secrets. No, Tommy's out of this. Michael, no. I stood, but I have something better. A complete set of Greg's documents. Building plans, financial records, everything Tommy could get his hands on. When can you get them to me? Tomorrow. But I want something in return. What? When you take him down, I won't be the one who tells Diane. Rebecca studied me. You've gone past revenge, haven't you? This is personal. It was always personal. The next morning, I met Tommy at a coffee shop near his school. He looked thinner, older than 14. Being a spy aged you. I need you to do something, I told him. Tonight, I need you to copy every file on Greg's computer. Everything. Dad, that's one last job, Tommy. Then you're done. You can go back to being a kid. He nodded, but we both knew that wasn't true. Whatever we'd been before, father and son, family was gone. That afternoon, Danny called with bad news. The building where Greg had sabotaged the elevator was settling the lawsuit quietly. Confidential agreement, no admission of guilt. They're covering it up, Danny said. The maintenance guy disappeared. Probably paid off. It doesn't matter, I told him. We're done with the legal approach. Michael, don't. I hung up. By evening, I had everything in place. The documents from Tommy would go to Rebecca tomorrow. Angela had scheduled a meeting with Greg's investors for next week, armed with evidence of his infidelity and Diane's theft. The Mayfield project was still shut down, hemorrhaging money daily. But the real blow was coming. At midnight, I was with my crew at an abandoned warehouse Greg owned. The place where, according to Rebecca's intel, he stored his most sensitive documents, the ones that could send him to prison. Boss, you sure about this? Rico asked as we approached with our equipment. I'm sure. We didn't need a break-in. Greg's security was good, but not good enough for someone who'd built half the buildings in the city. We entered through an old maintenance shaft, bypassing the cameras and alarms. The documents were exactly where Rebecca said they'd be. But as I loaded them into boxes, I found something else, something that changed everything. A file labeled Burke Residential. My old housing development, the one I'd lost in the divorce. Inside were contracts, emails, surveillance photos. Greg had been planning this for years. The affair with Diane wasn't passion, it was strategy. He'd seduced her away from me, used the divorce to weaken my business, then systematically destroyed my reputation with contractors and suppliers. The elevator wasn't his first attempt on my life. It was his third, and all of it, every penny, every scheme, every murder, was designed for one purpose: to take over my business empire and destroy the man who'd once humiliated him in a bid for a city contract 20 years ago. I'd forgotten about that contract. He hadn't. As I loaded the last box into our truck, I heard footsteps. Greg emerged from the shadows, gun in hand, Diane beside him. "You should have died in that elevator," he said. I smiled. "Funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you." The police swarmed in from every entrance, Rebecca at their head with her FBI badge. "Gregory Caldwell," she announced, "you're under arrest." Chapter 5, The Aftershock. The FBI raid hit like a tsunami. By morning, every news station was covering Greg Caldwell's downfall. The construction mogul revealed as a criminal mastermind, his empire built on blood and bribes. Diane's face was plastered next to his, arrested as an accomplice in everything from fraud to conspiracy to commit murder. But that was just the public show. The real impact was in the details. Tommy sat at my kitchen table, dazed as we watched his mother being led away in handcuffs on TV. "I'm sorry, Dad," he kept saying, like a broken record. "Don't be," I told him. "You did what you had to do." The documents we'd seized revealed everything. Greg's 5 murders disguised as accidents. His network of corrupt officials, from building inspectors to judges. And the proof of Diane's embezzlement. Not small amounts, but millions. But the biggest shock was personal. Among Greg's files was a letter from Diane to him, dated 3 months before a divorce. "Michael's too good for this world," she'd written. "Too honest, too trusting. He'll never see us coming." She was right. I hadn't seen it. I believed in family, in loyalty, in doing the right thing. Those beliefs had almost got me killed. My phone rang. Vincent Moretti. "Michael, you beautiful bastard. The Mayfield project just collapsed." Literally. What? The foundation shifted. The whole thing came down like a house of cards. Nobody hurt, but I hung up before he finished. The 3-degree flaw. In my anger, I'd forgotten about it. The water main break, the stress on the faulty foundation, it had worked too well. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. That emptiness lasted until I saw the woman standing outside my office. A striking Asian woman in her 40s, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed power. "Michael Burke." She extended her hand. "Sarah Chun. I represent several investment groups interested in acquiring distressed properties." I stared at her. "Sarah Chun, as in Chun Global Enterprises?" She smiled. "I see my reputation precedes me." Chun Global was the biggest development company in Asia, recently expanding to the U.S. They made Greg's empire look like a lemonade stand. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I've been following your situation. The way you dismantled Caldwell's operation was impressive. Thorough, ruthless when necessary, but surgical. Exactly what I need." "For what?" "I want you to rebuild everything Caldwell destroyed. His properties, his contracts, his clients, but legally this time. No shortcuts, no bribes, just honest construction." She handed me a file. "I'm prepared to invest $500 million. I opened the file. It was all there. Plans for a legitimate construction and development empire that would dwarf anything I dreamed of. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you understand what he misunderstood. Construction isn't just about buildings. It's about trust, community, legacy." She paused. "And because I know what it's like to be betrayed by family." That's when I noticed her ring, or rather, the pale line where a ring used to be. We talked for hours. By the end, I'd signed a partnership agreement that would make me one of the largest developers in the country. But it wasn't the money or the power that mattered. It was the realization that sometimes destruction is necessary for creation. That from the rubble of betrayal, something stronger can emerge. That night, I visited Diane in Holding. She looked small in her orange jumpsuit. Nothing like the woman who'd ruled our household with quiet authority. "Michael," she said through the glass, "I need you to understand." "Stop." I leaned forward. "I understand everything. The 4-year affair, the embezzlement, the elevator." She paled. Tommy told me everything. About the plan, the money, all of it. I stood to leave. You were right about one thing in your letter to Greg. I was too good for this world. Too trusting. Michael, please, we have children together. No, we don't. We have Tommy. And even he made his choice. I walked out. Later that week, I met with Tommy one last time. He'd be staying with Diane's sister in Chicago until the trial. Dad, he said, crying again, I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Tommy. I just don't know what you are anymore. I handed him an envelope. This is a trust fund for your education. It'll be available when you turn 21. But use it to become better than your parents. Better than me. As he left, I realized the truth. Family isn't blood. It's loyalty. It's trust. And once broken, some things can't be repaired. Sarah Chan was waiting in my office with her team of architects and engineers. Ready to build something? She asked. I looked at the plans spread across my desk. Towers and stadiums and schools and hospitals. Not just buildings, but a legacy. Ready to build everything. Chapter 6. The Rebuilding. Construction begins before dawn. The first sound is always the same. Steel against stone, generators rumbling to life. The metallic symphony of progress. 3 months after Greg's arrest, I watched from my mobile office as my crew poured the foundation for the new Riverside Heights development. Sarah Chin's money had moved fast. We'd acquired 5 of Greg's properties at auction, paying pennies on the dollar. Each one had been carefully dismantled, investigated, and prepared for reconstruction. Legal construction, structural integrity first, no shortcuts. Mr. Burke, my new assistant, Maria Rodriguez, knocked on the door. Mr. Reynolds is on line 1. Frank had news about the trial. Greg was looking at 40 years minimum. Diane's lawyers were pushing for a plea deal. Tell them no deals, I said. Both go to trial. Michael, Frank warned, that means Tommy will have to testify. I know. I hung up and watched my crew work. The new Riverside Heights would have affordable housing units, green spaces, a community center. Everything Greg's version lacked. Everything I'd learned mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from Angela. Found something. Urgent. She met me at the coffee shop where this had all started 3 months ago. Today, she handed me a burner phone and earbuds. What's this? Listen. The recording was from Greg's prison calls. His voice frustrated. I told you, find Burke's kid. He's the loose end. Deal with him. Michael, Angela said quietly. Someone's trying to kill Tommy. I grabbed my keys. Call Danny. Tell him I need a location on Tommy. Now. Chicago was 4 hours by car, 2 by plane. I drove. Faster. The call from Danny came as I hit the interstate. Got him. Lincoln Park. His aunt's place. But Michael. What? There's already someone there. A contractor from one of Caldwell's old crews. I floored it. Tommy was at a coffee shop, headphones on, doing homework. He didn't notice the man approaching until I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him aside. The bullet meant for my son shattered the window behind us. People screamed. I shielded Tommy with my body, scanning for the shooter. There, across the street, retreating into an alley. Dad! Tommy's voice was small again, like the night in the elevator lobby. Call 911. I told him. Tell them Michael Burke needs Danny Sullivan. The shooter was professional, but so was I. Years of construction taught you how buildings worked, how people moved through spaces where they hid. I caught him 3 blocks away, trying to hotwire a car. Greg sent you, I said. He reached for his gun. I broke his arm with a wrench from my truck. By the time Danny arrived with Chicago PD, I had the full story. Greg was trying to eliminate anyone who could testify against him. Tommy was first on the list. We'll protect him, Danny assured me. No, I said. I will. Back in New York, I moved Tommy into my house. Secured the perimeter, hired private security, and made sure everyone knew that threatening my son meant war with me. Why are you helping me? Tommy asked one night over dinner. After everything I did? Because you're still my son, I said. And because I believe people can change. He nodded quiet. Mom's been writing me from jail. What does she say? That she's sorry. That she never meant for any of this to happen. I put down my fork. Sometimes people prove who they are by their actions, not their words. Remember that. The next morning, Sarah Chun called with an offer. How would you feel about expanding internationally? Where? Tokyo first, then Shanghai. We've been invited to bid on the reconstruction of their waterfront. When? 6 months. We need your expertise on the team. Tommy was off to private school in New England in 3 weeks, protected by the best security money could buy. The trial would happen without him testifying. Angela had found enough evidence to bury Greg and Diane without needing my son. I looked at the plans spread across my desk. Buildings in Tokyo, bridges in Shanghai, entire neighborhoods redesigned from the ground up. I'll do it, I told Sarah. Good. There's one more thing. She paused. The investors want to know if you'd consider taking the company public. Burke Global Construction. Burke Global. Not Shun, not Burke Shin, but Burke. Let me think about it. I didn't need to think. The answer was yes. 3 weeks later, I stood at the airport with Tommy. He looked older now, harder than any 14-year-old should. You'll come visit? He asked. Every month. And you'll work with me this summer if you want. I'd like that. We hugged. As I watched him walk through security, I thought about the family we'd been and the family we'd lost. About loyalty and betrayal and the thin line between revenge and justice. My phone buzzed. Vincent Moretti, heard you're going global. Need a competitor? I smiled and called him back. Need a partner in Tokyo? Deal. As I drove back to the city, past the skyscrapers and construction sites, past the Riverside Heights development taking shape, I realized this was the true revenge. Not destroying them, but building something better to replace them. The old Burke construction had died in that elevator lobby 3 months ago. Something new was rising in its place. Chapter 7. The Empire. The Tokyo Grand Hotel project launched within 6 months. 60 stories of steel and glass rising from reclaimed waterfront, a testament to what Burke Global Construction had become. The opening gala was an international event, attended by investors, politicians, and industry titans. But I wasn't there. I was in New York, watching the live stream from my office, preparing for something more important. Mr. Burke, Maria interrupted. The district attorney is here. Margaret Shun, no relation to Sarah, entered with a file folder. We need you to testify next week. The prosecution rests their case against Diane and Caldwell. I told you I won't testify against Tommy. We don't need Tommy. We have everything we need from you. Your testimony about the elevator, the documents, the attempts on your life. I took the file. Inside were photos of Greg and Diane during the trial, both trying to maintain their dignity while their world crumbled. One condition, I said. I want to give my victim impact statement. She nodded. The judge already approved it. That night I wrote it. Not about the money or the betrayal or even the murder attempts. About something deeper. The trial was in its 8th week when I took the stand. The courtroom was packed. Media, investors, former employees, Tommy sitting with his therapist. Tell the court, the prosecutor said, how the defendant's actions affected your life. I looked at Diane, still beautiful even in her orange jumpsuit. At Greg, the man who'd wanted to be me so badly he'd try to kill me. For 20 years, I built things I began. Honest buildings where people lived and worked. I believed in doing things the right way. I trusted people, including my wife. Diane wouldn't meet my eyes. When I discovered the affair, I tried to be reasonable. I let Diane take half of everything. I tried to co-parent. I thought that was the honorable thing to do. Now I looked at Greg. You saw that as weakness. You saw my decency as something to exploit. The prosecutor let me tell the whole story. The 4-year affair, the systematic destruction of my business, the elevator's sabotage. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the betrayal or the murder attempt. It was my son, a boy I'd raised to know right from wrong. They corrupted him, turned him into someone who could participate in my murder. Tommy was crying now. Good. Let him feel it. You took a family and turned it into a weapon against itself. For that, I hope you both rot in prison forever. The judge thanked me. Greg's lawyer looked pale. Diane's was whispering frantically to her. Outside the courthouse, I found Tommy sitting on the steps. Can I ride with you? He asked. In the car, he was quiet until we hit the bridge. Do you hate me? No. Do you love me? I thought about that. I'll always be your father. But love? That's earned. How do I earn it back? I pulled into my driveway. You don't. You build something new instead. The next morning, Sarachin called. The board voted. Burke Global Construction is going public at a $30 billion valuation. When? 6 months. There's a condition, though. What? The investors want you to step down as CEO. Take a chairman role instead. I laughed. Why? They think you're too emotionally volatile. The trial, the revenge plot, the public destruction of your enemies, they're old school. They like stable leadership. Tell them no. Michael, tell them I'll sell them the company instead. All of it. For $40 billion. Silence. Then, you're serious. Dead serious. I built enough buildings. Time to build something else. The sale took 3 weeks. $40 billion. The biggest construction industry buyout in history. I kept my own crew, my original company, but sold everything else. At the closing party, Vincent Moretti pulled me aside. What's next for the great Michael Burke? I handed him a card with just an address. Come see tomorrow, 9 a.m. The building was in Brooklyn, near where I'd started Burke Construction 40 years ago. Old, abandoned, perfect for what I had planned. The Burke Foundation, I announced to the assembled crowd. Half for affordable housing construction. Half for teaching kids like Tommy how to build, how to create rather than destroy. Tommy was there, finishing his first year at boarding school. He'd changed, quieter, more thoughtful. Can I work here this summer? He asked. If you earn it. The foundation launched with its first project, rebuilding the affordable housing that Greg had demolished. Real homes for real families, built by young people learning an honest trade. Diane was sentenced to 20 years, Greg to life without parole. Neither of them would see me again. Neither would Tommy, until he proved he understood what betrayal truly costs. 3 months later, I was standing on the foundation of our newest project when my phone rang. An unknown number. Michael Burke? Yes. This is Dr. Elizabeth Monroe from New York Presbyterian. Your son, Tommy. My heart stopped. Has been volunteering in our emergency room, translating for construction workers who don't speak English, helping them navigate treatment after injuries. He gave a name as a reference. Relief, then curiosity. And he's remarkable. I wanted you to know. After I hung up, I had Maria track down which ER. Tommy was there that evening, helping a young worker from Mexico understand his discharge papers. He saw me watching. I thought I should do something useful. You are. No, I mean really useful. Not just trying to make up for her. There's no making up for it. I cut him off. There's only moving forward. Building something better. He nodded. Like you did. Like I had to. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But for the first time since the elevator lobby, I saw who my son could become. Later, walking through the construction site of our latest affordable housing project, I thought about endings and beginnings. About what gets destroyed and what gets built. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Can we get dinner sometime? Want to show you something I'm building. I looked at the text for a long moment, then replied, Saturday. Sometimes the foundation isn't where we think it is. Sometimes the real construction begins only after everything else falls apart. I'd built an empire of steel and concrete. Now I was building something harder, more delicate, more important. Not revenge, not justice, but maybe, in time, redemption. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows from the half-built structures. Tomorrow the work would continue. Tomorrow we'd build again. It's what I do. It's what we do. One brick at a time. Chapter 8. The Legacy. The Burke Foundation's headquarters stood where my greatest defeat should have been my grave. 2 blocks from Greg's former office, I'd purchased the empty lot and built a center for disadvantaged youth to learn construction trades. Every student who passed through these doors would know the story, how one man's greed had tried to destroy not just a family, but a community. Mr. Burke? The voice belonged to Maria. 5 years since the trial, she was now executive director of the foundation. Tommy's here. I watched from my office window as my son, 33 now, an architect with his own firm, walked the construction students through basic blueprint reading. He turned out all right, considering everything. The shame of what he'd done still showed in his shoulders sometimes, but he carried it like a man, not a runaway kid. We didn't speak every day, sometimes not every month, but we built. That was our language now. Michael, Sarah Chun entered without knocking. She did that now, part of the privilege of turning my company into a global empire. We have a situation. The file she handed me contained photos of Greg Caldwell. Prison had aged him 3 decades. Cancer, apparently. The warden thought he had months. He wants to see you, Sarah said. No. He says he has something for Tommy. Something that needs to be said. I set the file down harder than necessary. Tommy doesn't need his deathbed regrets. I told him you'd say that. Sarah sat. He said to give you this. The envelope was old, sealed with wax like something from another century. Inside was a letter in shaking handwriting. Michael, I'm dying, but that's not why I'm writing. Found in your son something that both of us lacked, the capacity for genuine remorse. He's been corresponding with Diane's victims, making amends where possible. Did you know? Probably not. He didn't want credit. There's something you don't know about the elevator. The real plan wasn't just to kill you. It was to frame Tommy, make it look like he'd sabotaged it himself. Diane's idea. She wanted to ensure sole custody by making him seem disturbed. He saved you without knowing I'd planned to destroy him too. Think about that. Greg, I read it twice, then burned it in the office fireplace. Tommy found me there an hour later, watching the ashes. You heard he's dying? He said. I heard. I've been writing him. That surprised me. Why? Because you taught me that work doesn't stop just because it's hard. He sat across from me. I've been writing all the families of his victims too. Apologizing, helping where I can with money, with work, whatever they need. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. He gestured to the foundation beyond the windows. You built this. I needed to build something too. We sat in silence, watching the students learn their trade. Do you hate me? He asked, like he had years ago. I stopped trying to hate you around the time I stopped trying to forgive you. What's between those? Life, I said. Work. Building things. He nodded. Sarah said they found more bodies. Property developers from the cities Greg was expanding into. They'll keep finding them for years. Diane testified against him, sealed her parole hearing. I knew. The district attorney had called last week. Diane would be eligible in 3 years with good behavior. Will you see her? Tommy asked. No. What if I do? I study my son. You're an adult. You don't need my permission. I need to know if that makes me disloyal. Loyalty to what? I stood. To the family that tried to kill me? To the mother who planned to frame you? I walked to the window. Build your own loyalty, Tommy. Your own family. Your own life. He left without another word. That evening, I found Vincent Moretti on my penthouse balcony, watching the sunset over Manhattan. Heard about Greg, he said. Everyone's heard. You gonna see him? No. Good. Vinny sipped his bourbon. You know what I respect most about you, Michael? You never gloated. Never needed them to know what you did. I thought about that. They knew. Not like someone would have shoved it in their faces. You just moved on. Built bigger. Built better. Below us, the city sparkled. How many of those buildings had we worked on? How many had Greg destroyed before his fall? You ever wonder what he could have been? Vinny asked. If he'd built instead of destroyed? No, I said. Some people aren't builders. They're just demolition waiting to happen. The next day, Tommy's secretary called. Mr. Burke? Your son wanted you to know he's meeting with Diane next week. At the prison. I thanked her and hung up. It wasn't my story anymore. 3 days later, Greg Caldwell died alone in the prison hospital. Tommy sent me the news. No funeral, no memorial, just cremation and disposal. An end fitting for someone who'd burned so many bridges. I didn't feel satisfaction or anger or anything at all. Just completion. That Saturday, I met Tommy at the construction site of his latest project, affordable housing for veterans. Mom wants to see me for Christmas, he said, tying rebar alongside his crew. When she gets out, and I'm thinking about it. I nodded, watching him work. His technique was better now. Efficient. Precise. You should come with me, he said. See the finished building when it's done. It was the first time he'd invited me to one of his projects. I'd like that. We worked side by side for a while, like we used to when he was young. The sun was setting when we finally stopped. Dad, he said as we cleaned up, I'm getting married. I hadn't known he was seeing anyone. Her name's Rachel. She works in legal aid. We met at one of my charity builds. When's the wedding? Next May. I'd like you to be there. I put down my tools and really looked at my son. Not the scared kid in the elevator lobby, not the betrayer seeking redemption, but a man who'd built himself from ruins. I'll be there, I said. Later, alone in my office, I pulled out the foundation plans for our newest project, a community center in the neighborhood where Burke Construction started. Tommy would design it pro bono, his first major commercial project. The circle closes. The work continues. The building never stops. I looked out of Manhattan at the empire I'd built twice now and thought about legacy. Not the buildings or the money or even the revenge, but this, my son learning to build from rubble. Learning that sometimes you have to destroy everything to create something true. I picked up the phone and called the Burke Foundation's admissions office. Next semester, I said, I want to teach a class. For the new students. What about building? Not just with bricks and mortar. With people too. Because in the end, that's the only construction that matters. The only foundation that lasts. The only revenge worth taking is to build something better where they tried to destroy you. And that's exactly what I did. Chapter 9, The Cornerstone. Tommy's wedding was held at sunset in the sculpture garden of his latest project, a mixed-income housing development that would become a model for the entire country. As I walked my son down the aisle, no mother to give him away, I thought about all the buildings we'd constructed and destroyed, and how this moment felt like finally putting down the last foundation stone. Rachel was exactly right for him. A legal aid attorney who'd grown up in the projects Tommy was now rebuilding. Her eyes had the same careful intelligence as Sarah Chen's, the same understanding that real power comes from knowing when to build and when to walk away. After the ceremony, Vincent Moretti found me at the bar. Her dying got out last week, he said. So I'm told. She tried to call you? Once. I didn't answer. Good. Vinny ordered 2 bourbons. Greg's accountant finally talked to the feds. 47 construction accidents over 20 years. 47. I thought about the families, the victims, the ripple effect of one man's greed. The foundation's opening a memorial next month, I said. For all of them. Tommy's designing it. He's come a long way. We all have. Later, Tommy found me watching the sunset from the roof garden. Mom called, he said, and I told her I'd meet her. Once. On neutral ground. Your choice. She wants to see you too. I shook my head. Some things don't need to be rebuilt. He nodded, understanding. I showed her the wedding invitation. She cried. They always do. We stood in silence, watching the city lights blink on. You know what I realized? Tommy said, we're not a family anymore. Not like we were. No, but we built something else. Something cleaner. I thought about that. About Sarah Chen's empire, about the foundation, about students learning honest trades, about buildings rising where Greg's had fallen. You build with what you have, I said. Sometimes that's love, sometimes hate, sometimes just determination to prove everyone wrong. Which was it for you? I considered. All of them. Tommy left to find his bride, and I found Sarah Chun smoking on a fire escape. Still doing that? I asked, sitting beside her. Only at weddings. And board meetings. She exhaled. Speaking of which, the Tokyo branch wants you to consult on their next project. Tell them no. I did. They're offering ridiculous money. Still no. She studied me. Done building. Done with buildings. I gestured to the wedding below, to the city spreading in all directions. Time for something else. Like what? Like watching what grows from the seeds we've planted. A month later, I stood at the memorial Tommy designed, a spiral of white stone carved with names, surrounded by a garden where visitors could sit and remember. The families came, one by one, to touch the names of their lost ones. Some told me their stories. All thanked Tommy for remembering. Diane came too, at the very end, unrecognized in a scarf and sunglasses. She found the name of my foreman from 20 years ago, one of Greg's first victims, and placed flowers there. I watched from my office window as she knelt, shoulders shaking. After a while, Tommy went to her, helped her to her feet, walked her to a bench. They talked for an hour. When she left, he came to find me. She wanted to apologize, he said. For which part? All of it. The affair, the divorce, the elevator. He paused, planning to frame me. I already knew about that. Greg told me. before he died. Said she wanted sole custody, wanted to make you think I was unstable, and yet you still talk to her, because holding on to hate is exhausting. He sat in the chair across from my desk. She's sick, Dad. Cancer like Greg. Maybe they deserved each other, even in that. I thought about justice, about karma, about buildings falling and rising. Will you see her again? No. Today was it. Closure. Good. After he left, I pulled out the old blueprints of Greg's failed projects and burned them, one by one, in the fireplace. The paper curled and blackened, turning to ash. Sarah Chun called as the last blueprint caught fire. The board wants to name the Tokyo building after you, she said. Tell them to name it after their children instead. Let the next generation build their own legacy. Michael Burke, philosopher. Michael Burke retired. That night, I had dinner with Vincent, Danny, and Angela, my unlikely team, still meeting years after our war with Greg. What's the foundation's next project? Danny asked. Teaching kids to build, I said. Not just houses, honest businesses, strong families, communities that last. Sounds boring, Vincent said. After 47 murders? I raised my glass. Boring sounds perfect. In bed that night, alone in my penthouse, I never remarried, never wanted to. I dreamed about the elevator. But this time, I was watching from above as the sabotage car plummeted, taking Greg and Diane with it. Tommy sat beside me, pointing out the flaws in the engineering. I woke knowing it was just a dream. Reality was better anyway. The next morning, Maria found me studying the foundation class roster for fall. 47 students enrolled, she said. Twice what we expected. Good. Time to teach them what I learned. The hard way. About construction. About everything. At noon, I took my first ever lunch break at the local diner. Outside, I watched crews working on Tommy's latest project, the memorial gleaming white in the sunlight, the city continuing its endless process of destruction and renewal. A text from Tommy. Dad, Rachel's pregnant. Due in May. I stared at the message for a long time, then called him. You're sure it's yours? I asked. He laughed. Yes, Dad. We've been married a year. Just checking. Can't be too careful these days. I learned from the best. After I hung up, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't planning revenge or building towards some future satisfaction. I was just content. The Burke Foundation would continue. Tommy would raise his child to build, not destroy. Sarah Chin's empire would grow, creating jobs and homes across continents. Diane would live out her remaining years in whatever peace cancer allowed. And me? I'd teach. I'd remember. I'd make sure the next generation understood that some foundations can't be rebuilt, but that doesn't mean you stop building. In the distance, a new tower was rising where Greg's office once stood. Not one of mine, not Tommy's, just another anonymous building in the endless cycle of construction. That was fine. We'd built what needed to be built. Sometimes you win by outlasting your enemies. Sometimes by destroying them. Sometimes just by surviving their attempts to destroy you and growing stronger from the cracks. I learned all three, taught them all. And now, watching the city build itself anew, I finally understood what my father tried to tell me 40 years ago. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. Build well. Build true. And if someone tries to tear down what you've built, build it stronger the next time. That's not forgiveness. It's not forgetting. It's just the way the world works, one brick at a time. One life at a time. One foundation at a time. The cornerstone is always the hardest to place, but once it's set, everything else follows. Mine is set now. The building can begin. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.